You have an incumbent who's running for a fourth term. It is going to be a referendum on her. You better win the referendum. Instead, she's out there making ads about how John Ewing is supposedly pro-trans. The people that made those ads and directed that campaign should not work in Nebraska politics again.
Educate, inform, inspire. The Dan Parsons Show, a podcast that lifts up instead of tearing down.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Dan Parsons Show. I'm your host, Dan Parsons. Bit of an upset in Tuesday's Omaha mayor's race. Douglas County Treasurer John Ewing Jr. defeated incumbent Jean Stothert to become the next mayor of Omaha. And the official political consultant to the Dan Parsons Show, Ryan Horn, is here to break it all down. And as usual, Ryan doesn't hold back. Here's my chat with Ryan. Enjoy.
The people decide. The voices impacting Omaha. This is Election Coverage 2025 on The Dan Parsons Show.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Our political consultant, Mr. Ryan Horn. Ryan, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me. Something going on in politics?
Well, you know, as often happens, Ryan and I, so this is, you're hearing this or seeing this a couple days after the Tuesday election of the mayor of Omaha. And so as often happens on election night, Ryan and I find each other, or I find myself bugging Ryan by text, and my thumbs get a workout. And so one thing leads to another, and Ryan carved out some time in his day to join us here today. And so just a reminder to our audience, Ryan, of course, fan favorite, political consultant with offices in Omaha, Nebraska and Washington, D.C., and knows a thing or two about the Omaha mayor's race because he's been involved in that. So, Ryan, a bit of a shocker on Tuesday. And I don't think a lot of people were surprised that the mayor was defeated last night by John Ewing. But I think a lot of people were shocked at the margin. Those of us who were following the race kind of saw that maybe the mayor was having some difficulties, but I don't think anyone saw the margin. I mean, she conceded before 9 o'clock or shortly after 9 o'clock last night. So anyway, I'm going to shut up, and Ryan, you dive in and help us understand how the longest serving mayor in America, Republican mayor, was defeated last night by Douglas County Treasurer John Ewing.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a surprising result. You know, for the audience's full disclosure, I spent a lot of time in commercial advertising and decided at one point in my career I was a little bored of writing Nachos Navidad ads for Taco John's and mattress ads for President's Day sale for Nebraska Furniture Mart. And
those were damn good commercials, though.
Thank you. I can write a mean mattress ad to this day. But my first client, when I decided to try to do something that I found a little more meaningful, my first client was Jean Stothert. So I know her well. And I think she's been a great mayor. I have not worked with her directly since her first run for mayor, in which I was her manager and designed her advertising campaigns. So that's
over 12 years ago, right?
It was over 12 years ago. Exactly. And that was obviously a big win. Everybody counted her out, ran a good campaign, made a good case for why we needed the change that she was bringing. And then I think she's been a very good mayor.
Yeah.
And what happened here is that this current team did not make the case for why voters needed to keep her in office and the risk that a change would bring. They didn't do it.
Well, and I think, and by the way, our viewers know this because we've been covering both the Omaha mayor's race and the Lincoln City Council and school board races, and our election was last week. All of the incumbent city council members were returned by comfortable margins. And so I think there's some similarities in the state's two largest cities that both Omaha and Lincoln are doing pretty damn well. And I think voters, certainly in Lincoln, responded that way. And I think a lot of people thought that the voters would respond the same in Omaha because, like I said, Mayor Stothert was considered to be a good mayor. and had accomplished a lot in a growing, vibrant city.
Yeah, exactly. She'd been a great mayor for the city. And that's why it's all the more confounding. Like you talked about how Omaha's doing pretty darn good compared to other cities. It sure is, but you wouldn't know that from watching her ads.
Huh.
Right? I mean, if you listen to these overwritten scripts really, really closely and the 17 bullet points from their poll that they jammed into the script, which of course nobody does, but if you did, maybe you'd pick up something about more funding for cops or lower taxes. You don't see that she remade the skyline of Omaha.
Yeah.
You don't see the new park and water.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
And the most beautiful parks in America.
Yeah.
I'd say anywhere west of Midtown Manhattan. You don't see that. Instead, you see all these shots of stage shots of four people standing awkwardly in somebody's backyard and her walking through a Hallmark store in Countryside Village. What does that have to do with anything?
Because we are so visual. Let's just dig
visual learners.
Yeah.
And she I don't like to lay too much at the feet of operatives because there's so many other things going on. But this was an amateur campaign that was executed in an amateur fashion. You have an incumbent who's running for a fourth term. It is going to be a referendum on her. You better win the referendum.
Yeah.
You better at least make the case. Instead, she's out there making ads about how John Ewing is supposedly pro-trans. Okay, this is a city Donald Trump lost by 15 points.
Yes.
Right? Like put your noggin on for a second. Right? It was just absolute malpractice what they did to her. The way that they let her down. And the advice that they gave her, and the people that made those ads and directed that campaign should not work in Nebraska politics again.
Yeah. That's what I love about Ryan Horn. He's not going to beat around the bush.
They're just not up for it. And I think I count Jean as a friend. We don't talk every day. She's a big personality. But she was a good mayor, and she was a good mayor for my hometown. And I'm upset about it. And I think they deserve most of the blame. Certainly, there were some headwinds, and we can some of that is probably worth talking about.
Yeah, here's what the Nebraska Examiner wrote last night. Local political observers had predicted that Stothert's biggest challenges were likely voter fatigue, unrest about the economy under President Donald Trump, and the lack of a clearly articulated plan for a fourth term. And then, they go on to say attack ads on Ewing from the GOP right about Democrat Party support for young people who are transgender, as you mentioned, and attack ads on Stothert from the left for the mayor backing Trump, who she supported. So, that kind of lays out exactly what you said. Right?
Yeah, it's just a bunch of amateurs running that campaign, looking and saying, hey, Donald Trump won the presidency. He did this great ad about how Kamala's for, she, her, not you. Like, great. That was a brilliant ad. Okay. It was a brilliant ad. And it captured a cultural moment about how the Democrats and the left had become too woke. Right.
It's
Trump lost the city of Omaha by 15 points.
Yeah. And it's almost like, in addition to that fact of how Donald Trump did in that district, mm-hmm. They seem to have forgotten about the last 120 days of this disastrous start by President Trump. The economy is diving. Right. We're unsure. Businesses are unsure of their supply chains. I mean,
there was plenty of research there. There's plenty of facts there that show that when you put it side by side, like who's going to manage your taxes and your spending better and your roads better, Jean Stothert or John Ewing? Jean Stothert was going to be better. And they didn't make that case. They just didn't make it, right? Now, I'm falling back to the incompetence of her team again. The headwind, I think, is real. One thing the Nebraska Examiner mentioned is voter fatigue, right? One second. That happens with executive offices, right? So, it happens with mayors and governors in a way that you don't typically see with senators or congressmen. Voters will send their senator back for 20 years or more.
It's the long game, right?
The long game. For an executive job, there is this feeling like, well, let's give somebody else a chance. I mean, there really is a feeling, there is a fatigue after a while that even people who do a good job and are pretty popular, right, which Jean was, can start to face headwinds. And so I definitely think there was some of that for sure. That was going to be a challenge for her, no doubt about it. And then I do think Donald Trump is a bit of a headwind in the city of Omaha, generally speaking. I would argue that 100 days ago, he was really like as popular as he's ever been.
Yes.
And he still lost the city by double digits.
Yeah. His popularity has not improved,
and it hasn't improved. It hasn't improved since then.
Well, and don't you think a lot of those voters, and I'm not going to lump them,
making an ad that mimicked his message. You're playing into they played right into the hand of John Ewing. He's saying she's just like Donald Trump, and then she goes and makes an ad that is just like Donald Trump.
Yeah. When I saw that, I knew right then that she was in trouble. Because I think for a lot of people, and this just isn't the left Democrat party here in Nebraska and in Omaha. These are, I'm describing people, Republican moderates and Democrat centrists who for the first time since that presidential election get to voice their displeasure of where the country is going.
Yeah.
And so this election for those people in Omaha was the first time that they got to express themselves. And let's face it, they're pissed off.
Yeah, there's energy. There's energy on the left, right? And that's been the challenge with Donald Trump and his remaking of the Republican Party is that we traded white suburban women, right, for young working men, and white suburban women vote every time, and young working men vote once every 4 years.
Yep.
Right? And that's only if you remind the hell out of them. And so we have this problem, this structural problem where, Donald Trump has won, really 2 elections, and the Republican Party has only lost in every other election with him as the leader of the party, right? And we saw that same thing happen where the voters that turned out, the Republican voters, just didn't turn out. It wasn't a bad turnout, but it wasn't.
32%, I think, is what I saw.
It wasn't great, and the Democratic voters were more motivated. So that's a story that we've seen throughout the 10 or 12 years that Trump has dominated American politics. We saw it again last night.
Speaking of turnout, this was the headline in WWT. Governor Pillen blames West Omaha Republicans for the mayor's defeat.
Yeah.
And so he was arguing that he's disappointed in that conservatives did not show up. So there's probably some truth to that, I suspect.
There is some truth to that. She didn't carry it by as wide of margins. I mean, I think you'd have to look and say, there are probably a number of things going on. One was, West Omaha is where some of those voters, those Republican voters that didn't, that aren't coming out as often, that's where they live on the far exurbs, right? The other thing I think you'd probably have to say is that streetcar issue, was never sold well to the people of Omaha.
They didn't have to, right?
Because they thought they didn't have to.
Yeah.
Because they thought that there wasn't going to be a vote on it. Well, voters have a way of deciding whether there's going to be a vote on it. And if they're mad enough about something, right, they're going to vote on it when it comes time to vote for mayor. They're going to find a way. And I don't think it wasn't the type of issue like, say, the restaurant tax and all those tax increases were, and the spiking, where this was just a dominant issue that where you just had a taxpayer revolt 12 years ago. And that's what brought Jean into office. This wasn't that strong, But it was just enough that, on a nice day in May, and I'm living my life in West Omaha, and my kids got a baseball game.
Yeah.
And, John Ewing doesn't seem like that bad, and I don't really love that. It just pulled down enthusiasm just enough. I think you'd have to say it was probably a factor.
Yeah. So let's keep this conversation going. So what's the fallout? What's the fallout from this? Again, I think it was a bit of a shock to a lot of people. I saw national headlines today, and so what's the fallout? I've been telling people, I was texting and maybe even doing some tweeting last night. Hey, next May and next November is still a long time away.
Long time away.
But if these trends continue, because every election we've had now since Trump has been back in the office has seen, even in some other red districts, have seen a surge in Democratic support.
Yeah.
So what does this mean? I think most people are looking at CD2. Is Don Bacon going to run again? I think that's one of the questions. Denise Powell, well known and for helping women run for Congress, has declared her candidacy as a Democrat to run against Bacon. There's suggestions that John Kavanaugh, State Senator John Kavanaugh, who's a Democrat, is interested in that seat. So put your soothsayer hat on, Ryan Horn, and what does this mean for elections next year in Nebraska, if anything?
I think you hit it right on the head. Not much. Right. That's the reality is, because like you said, it's 18 months away. And whether it turns out that, Treasury Secretary Steve Bessett or the weird trade advisor that doesn't believe in trade, whoever ends up actually running the tariff policy in Donald Trump's mind has a lot more to do with whether CD2 is in play.
Yep.
Next cycle than the Omaha mayor's race. I think that's the reality because tariffs don't work. They've never worked. They've been tried. They fail every time. They don't raise revenue. They decrease. They push down growth. Basically, the cheap things that we get to fuel our lives, that make our lives good, that we're able to get inexpensively from other countries, we can't get them inexpensively anymore.
Or at all.
Or at all. Like why we put a tariff on coffee? We don't grow coffee. Okay, we don't grow coffee. There's a few Kona farms in Hawaii.
Yep.
Why are we taxing coffee? It's just a sales tax on products that are imported, and a lot of products are imported. So they don't work. They're not going to work. They're not ever going to work. We know this. And
the economy has already begun to respond to that, from the stock market to the
market
supply chain.
The financial markets are very clear, right? So every time Donald Trump gets a pro-tariff idea in his head, the bond market and the stock market in America decline. And every time he walks it back, they go up, right? Because the markets are very clear. They understand how economics and business work, right? So he seems to be off of the tariff thing at the moment. And if he continues to go that way, I could see this economy turning around pretty quickly and things could look very, very different. Right. And you could get less regulation. You're going to get less regulation. People underestimate how much cutting red tape, how much red tape from the government there is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like I've used the example, like when Obama expanded the Waters of America Act beyond its to define a navigable waterway to the point where Papillion, like North Elkhorn Creek or whatever, was a navigable waterway and you could literally stand on either side of it. And that stopped a bridge from connecting Dodge to Maple Street at 180th.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
You get rid of that presidential regulation. Donald Trump did. Get rid of that. Guess what? They're breaking ground. Now 180th Street goes through. Think about all the jobs that created, all the residential development now that's along that street. The Target goes in, the Walmart goes in, right? Like people underestimate how much federal government overregulation saps the economy. So you're going to get less, you're going to get the foot off the throat of the economy, right? That That will help the economy grow. Maybe you'll get some pro-growth stuff in this tax package. The world could look a lot better for the Republicans than people are saying right now, 18 months from now. Or we could be going back and forth on this silly, let's try the McKinley trade policy again.
Well, and speaking about that tax package, I'm not, believe me, I'm not prepared to dive into that. What's that? Go ahead.
So maybe the McKinley trade policy didn't work in the 1870s, but maybe it will this time.
Some of the elements in that tax package include cutting entitlements and cutting programs that a lot of people are depending on, and it's not just the lower income people in need. Obviously, those people are affected too. It's projected to impact hospitals in rural Nebraska. And obviously with some of the other cuts that the president and Elon Musk have instituted are affecting a lot of things right here in Nebraska. Heck, Congressman Flood had to come and save the weather balloons.
Yeah, the weather office in Valley. Yeah,
so some of those things are also going to come into play in the next election, and so how does that impact? Well, again, if you want to project about what Congressman Bacon is thinking about today, he's obviously said that he's considering not running again. So that is certainly publicly acknowledged that he may not. Mm-hmm. And again, as we've said, 18 months from now, but he's got to make those decisions, and people are making decisions today about whether they're going to run for office next year.
Yeah, I think right now there's a lot of enthusiasm on the left. Like they feel like, okay, this is a midterm. They see this kind of craziness from Donald Trump on the tariff policy and again, Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand that a tariff is just a sales tax at the border. Like that's all it is. Like,
and it impacts middle class more than anybody.
That's all it is. I don't understand that. But anyway, I spent too much time on that. They look at that and they see, well, historically you have a snapback in a midterm. Donald Trump's, the Republican Party has lost every election under Donald Trump that Donald Trump wasn't on the ballot, right? And so they're just looking at it going, okay, well, like maybe people will overlook, how much they don't like us, being the Democrats, because the only party that people hate more than the Republicans is the Democrats. By a pretty wide margin, yes. Right? They're just viewed as completely out of touch with middle America.
Yes.
But they have big problems, y'all. But right now they are sort of calculating that, well, there's going to be a snapback. So there's a lot of energy in recruitment right now. I'm not sure that necessarily that's going to be the case. We'll just have to see, right? We just had a big political surprise last night. A year and a half ago, not many people would have predicted that Jean Stothert would lose re-election. But that's what makes this business so interesting.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, I appreciate you taking time to pop on here. Because I know you're a fan favorite, and I know you got a lot of things going on, but we will continue to follow this, my friend. You're welcome back anytime. We always appreciate it, and we'll have a little bit more time to prepare for our next episode. But final thoughts. As what other races are you looking at in the weeks and months ahead, and what's going on in Bullhorn Communications?
We're taking a breather from some of our East Coast client work right now, and starting to talk to people about who we're going to be helping in 2026. That is just starting to come alive now. Some of the big statewide races for U.S. Senate and governor and things like that are people are starting to really poke around in those things, but it's early yet in the election cycle. I think final thoughts. Jean Stothert was a great mayor for Omaha. She really did a great job. Think about all the problems that she fixed. She got rid of the spiking. She got the union contracts, the fire and the police contract in order. She added cops to the roles we desperately needed. She got she held the tax rate, the property tax rates down. She got more funding, sales tax funding put to try to catch up the road construction. She built a beautiful park. Her legacy is going to be long. It's going to be really, really long, I think. And she'll be remembered as one of the great mayors.
Yeah. Well, and again, historically, not to dive back into identity politics, but Jean Stothert was the first female mayor of Omaha. John Ewing's the first black mayor of Omaha. So there you go. But yeah, I think the city's in good hands. And as I've gotten to know John Ewing a little bit, I think he's going to do a fabulous job. So we'll watch and see. Ryan Horn, the political consultant for the Dan Parsons Show. Thanks, buddy, for hopping on.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.
All right. Take care. Hey, thanks so much, Ryan, for hopping on at this last minute. I really appreciate your political insights. Very impressive, as always. Thanks to the Parsons team who made this show possible. Chase Porter, executive producer. Ike Samanas, producer and graphic design. Penology, tech solutions, technical help and equipment. Kim Remington, Parsons PR's director of operations. And my thanks to each of you for your support. It really means a lot to us. And if you're not following us on YouTube yet, hop on over there and hit the subscribe button. You don't want to miss one of these episodes. We're already surpassing last month's record views on YouTube. Okay, that's today's show. Thanks for tuning in. Now go do good things. I'm Dan Parsons.